Hello. Welcome to the Wake Up Laughing podcast. I'm Dave Munson, your host, and this is Rebecca Slosberg from Rogue Valley Farm to School Project. She is the co-executive director of Rogue Valley Farm to School Project here in the Rogue Valley in Southern Oregon. And I would like to encourage everyone to go to davidcmunson.com and check out samples of my book and some fun, you can see some excerpts of what Patch Adams wrote as a preface to the book, and share it with your friends. And so there's all the formal stuff. Now we're just going to talk about Rogue Valley Farm to School Project, which is based out of Ashland, Oregon, here in Southern Oregon. And I've been involved with Rogue Valley Farm to School since I came to town 13 years ago, interviewing some of the earliest directors on my radio show. I've cried on the radio with Tracy Harding about the type of food that is being fed to the, or that was being fed to the kids, and probably still is in some situations. But anyway, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is awesome. I just, I have 23 chapters in my book, and one of them is garden. I've gotten the chapter names down to the simplest. It started out like work in the garden, but anyway, it's gardening.
Yep.
And the psychological benefits and physical and mental benefits of being in the garden. And it's, my book is for kids, so it's about kids, but it's also about adults and babies. It's about everybody. And it's kind of interesting to me. I'm going to try not to talk the whole time. It's interesting to me that the interface between actual nature and then the man-made environment of the garden. And so that's like a whole other thing. But I have a chapter on nature and a chapter on gardening. But some of the benefits of gardening are that you are in nature.
Yeah.
And nature is nature, whether man is controlling it or not, it's still nature. So Rebecca, thank you again for coming on the show. And you're kind of new as the co-executive director.
I am, yep. So I took over in the spring. Our previous executive director, Sheila, moved on to other things, and so it was kind of an opportunity for us to rethink how we do our leadership, and we realized that one person can't really do all the things that our executive director was doing. So we decided to split it up into co-executive directors, which is kind of a hot new thing, I guess. I'm starting to see more and more organizations doing this. Because really it's hard for one person to have all the skills that you need to run a nonprofit, even a small nonprofit. So
skills and time. It seems
and time,
cool.
It's not there's no way to do everything that has to be done in 40 hours a week. So so we split it up. I'm in charge of the programs, which is kind of what I was doing. I was education director, and I support the staff. And my co-executive director, Kristen, does kind of the money side of financial management and fundraising and that whole piece, which is a huge job in itself.
So what's the contact for Rogue Valley Farm to School if somebody wants to go there?
Get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of ways you can get a hold of us. If you just go to our website.
Or you just punch in Rogue Valley Farm to School, and there you are.
Yeah, and you'll see all our contacts. If you want to contact me, my email is on there, and my phone is on there, and just go there and you'll find us. We're on Instagram and Facebook and all that too.
So I have this tradition on Farm Talk Radio I've been doing for 11 years where I ask my guests to share an early food memory. And I gave you a little bit of warning this morning at 7 a.m. Do you have some kind of like really powerful early food memory?
I was thinking about it this morning. I've thought about it before. It's actually one of those questions that comes up. It's come up multiple times. Farm to school people love to talk about food memories. It's like one of those like great questions. been in various gatherings where people ask that question. So I've thought about it before. I have a lot of early food memories. I'm really lucky that I grew up in a family that appreciated food and liked to get together and eat. And so I was thinking through all these memories were popping into my head. And I don't know, for some reason, memories around my grandparents kept coming up.
They always do.
Yeah, which is great. On one side, I had a grandpa that retired from being a doctor and became a farm worker. Walked down the road to the farm and worked as a farm worker. He was like,
found peace after all the pressure of being a doctor.
What he did from the time he was like, in his 60s till his 90s.
Nice.
So those, that side we always had like fresh fruits and vegetables from the farm, which I was really lucky. My mom, had a beautiful garden. So I grew up around that. But the memory that kept coming back into my brain this morning was kind of the complete opposite. So I thought I would just go with that, which is my grandparents on my dad's side lived in Maine, and they were not farmers or, my grandpa had his little garden. He had a few flowers, but nothing, not big in the farm garden world. But my grandma loved to cook, typical kind of Jewish grandma, like always pushing food on everybody, and would make these huge,
squeezing you to see how fat you are.
As soon as you'd finish eating, she'd, like push I'd be like, oh no, I'm good. And she'd always say like, I know you're good. You're great. You're wonderful. But do you want more food? It's just like this constant,
Wow.
So she was a great cook. But the memory that's coming up is around my grandpa on that side, who I call Papa Sam. So it's my millennium Papa Sam, my Jewish grandparents.
Nice.
And, they grew up kosher, and so not eating bacon. But my grandpa in his later years decided that he just loved bacon, and so
all bets are off. I'm over 60.
All bets are off.
If I can't get into Jewish heaven, well, I'll have all this bacon here in hell.
Exactly. So this memory I have is like the most unhealthy food memory. So like sitting in my grandparents' little kitchen, they had like this huge dining room, but they had this little tiny kitchen with this little Formica red table, and my grandpa would. It was kind of his thing. He'd make the bacon and he'd always kind of like overcook it to be like, really crunchy. And then on like the weekend, he'd go down to this little Gardner, Maine, little tiny town, go down to the donut shop and bring back donuts. And so this memory I have was like...
Double taboo.
I know.
Donuts and bacon.
Donuts and bacon. It's like as far away from healthy eating as you can get. But it's a strong memory because it was, like a special treat that I got to do with Papa Sam. I wasn't allowed to have donuts. My parents weren't into that. My parents were hippies and like made me eat, healthy food.
Yeah.
Which is great. I'm thankful for that now. But
yeah.
At the time it was like such a treat to get to have bacon
nice.
And donuts for breakfast.
Yeah.
With Papa Sam,
Aww.
Sit at the kitchen table, and I think it's an early memory because it's such a strong, it's such a special thing, and
yeah, and a sweet environment. It sounds like you loved your grandma and grandpa, so you were in this like safe, really sweet place.
Yeah, Papa Sam was kind of a little standoffish. He had like a great sense of humor, but like there wasn't a lot of times where I got to just me and him. So that was like a strong memory when I was real little of having donuts and bacon. So
I thought you were gonna say that he had like a little table at the end of the room in the corner, and he had to sit over there to do his bacon.
It was kind of weird because we never ate in the kitchen. They had this like huge dining room table, and even for like lunch, we'd all go sit in this big like kind of formal dining room. An old New England house. It's like a huge house and big dining room. But yeah, when he had his donuts and bacon, it was at this little tiny table in the kitchen, and maybe it was kind of like,
okay, right.
But other people were allowed to join him.
Do they have a concept of sin in the Jewish religion, or do they call it? They wouldn't call it that.
It's different. I didn't grow up very religiously. Like, what sticks out to me about growing up with Jewish traditions is really all the food. Like that's the part of.
Nice.
That I take away is all the like special foods you get to have at the holidays and things.
Cool.
But I didn't grow up going to synagogue regularly, and
I think it's awesome if food can be at the center, food and nature at the center of our religion, of our culture, of our daily activities.
Yeah.
Food and nature. It's so cool. How about a early farm garden memory?
Yeah. Again, I feel like I was lucky that I was around my mom loved to garden and my grandma loved to garden. My grandma on her side. So that first story was about my dad's side.
Right.
So my
Is
second
he Jewish
story.
on the other side
No,
too?
on the other side, you
Okay.
know, like stoic New Englanders, Protestant. Again, not very religious, but my grandma, who we call Gram Bumps.
Okay.
That's a whole other story why she's called that. But
Green bumps.
Gram Bumps had this amazing. She was an amazing gardener. She loved to garden. And the memory that came up around that was she had this, you know, they had this huge old, like 1700s house. It was like pre-revolutionary house that was like crazy. My grandpa made furniture, so it was like all this old furniture. It was like going
cool.
back in time being in this house. It was very cool.
Nice.
My grandma, you know, was super into gardening, and she had a little glass greenhouse attached. You know, it's like one of those ones where you just like it's on the side of the house.
Yeah, sure.
And the memory that came up was going there in the winters. We'd go there for Christmas times. We'd like do Christmas with those grandparents, Hanukkah, the other grandparents. It's great as a kid.
It's a big party.
Yeah, so
Nice.
this was New England and Massachusetts, and so you know you go and there you know, often it would be this memory I'm thinking of. It was winter, and so there was snow on the ground, and there was snow, you know, kind of on the edge of the greenhouse. It's like one of those like you know comes off the side.
Yeah.
And my grandma would go out every morning, and so it was also like another special thing of getting to spend time with Gram Bumps. Is I'd go out with her, and she'd go out, and she had this like little copper watering can, you know, with like the big long spout.
Yeah.
And she had her plants inside the greenhouse. She'd bring all her geraniums in, so you have geraniums in your windowsill.
Yeah.
That smell, so like I think that's why it's such a strong, I have a strong memory because there was such a smell in that greenhouse of like, you know, the soil, the damp soil, that greenhouse smell, and then she had like flagstone and gravel on the ground, and that just had like a really strong smell, and then the geraniums, and she'd have orchids in there, cymbidium.
Nice.
Yeah, I get to go with grandma. It was such a like magical thing to be in this warm, humid, surrounded by plants, and then looking out at snow and cold and bare trees outside, and getting to tend the plants, and she'd go and you know, deadhead and like you know,
nice.
Boy,
Boy,
so that was a great memory.
It sounds like you had some good people and a good family in your life.
Yeah, really lucky.
Sounds like a fairy tale.
Well,
Grandpa's making furniture, grandma's down in the greenhouse tending her plants. It sounds awesome.
You know, every family's got its things, but yeah, I feel really lucky that I had a strong connection with my both sets of grandparents.
Nice. So I'm thinking Rogue Valley Farm to School has been working for like 15 years now or something.
Yeah, I think it's getting on there. Over 10. I know we had our 10th anniversary, so yeah, we're getting up, probably close to 15.
So for like 15 years, the organization that you're with has been bringing children from the classroom out to farms to spend like almost an entire day, and in some cases the kids would walk to the farm if it was close enough, which is kind of cool. You don't have to get in a car or a bus. And then the kids will spend just about the entire day harvesting, planting, weeding, and then preparing a meal in the outdoor kind of farm kitchen. So kids are actually handling knives and was sauteing. I was a volunteer. I helped saute greens. We made the red sauce for the pizza. And then you've got, so much of it is volunteers. Then you've got this wonderful man who's running, or woman, but when I remember, I think it was Jonathan.
At Eagle Mill.
The incredible, talented Jonathan had the fire going in the pizza oven when we showed up. And then his son was a chef, and so like there was all of these parents kind of coming in, but the kids were involved in everything. And so it's just I know it's transformational, and I get that ideally this farm experience is at your home. It's like part of your everyday experience. It's not like once a month or twice a year you go to a farm. Because one of the things I say in my book is that ideally you get the medicine you need throughout your day, everywhere you go. So each day you're just going around getting it.
Well, I think we have shifted in that way, and that, for years that's where we started at Eagle Mill Farm, right? It was the Eagle Mill Farm project before it was Rogue Valley Farm School. And it started with these farm experiences, and it was maybe, once a year kids would come out. It started with little kids coming out to pick pumpkins in the fall. And then it expanded into these harvest meals, like you're saying, back in the day when, we were doing it there at Eagle Mill. But, over the years, we kind of realized that it would be great if it wasn't just this kind of one-off thing, that really there was like this more consistent, in-depth chance for kids to get out. And it's not realistic for kids to go on a farm trip every, week, but a lot of schools were starting to have gardens at their school as part of the school. And so we've shifted, and now the main contact we have with kids is we have partner schools where they have a garden, and we're out with the kids once a week in the garden. And so that, I think, is really
cool.
We call it our Digging Deeper School Partnership. And
nice.
So back when Melina, my predecessor, kind of came up with this idea of how do we kind of get more in depth instead of these one-off things. And so now we've moved to this partnership program where the schools that we partner with get all the things that we do. So the kids get to come out weekly into the garden. They get to go on a fall and a spring field trip to the farm.
Nice,
and they get monthly tasting tables, and that's for the whole school. So the garden time is for like a grade level, 2 or 3, 10. But the whole school gets these tasting tables where we're sourcing local produce from farms and bringing it in, and doing different things. So like carrots, we had just sliced carrots, but also had like a carrot slaw with whistling duck dressing, and so we're sourcing local things and having kids try things. Carrots are maybe not as new and different. It's an easier sell, but next month's going to be beets, and that's always like a little for some kids, it's weird and new and strange.
Wow.
Last year we did pickled beets and roasted beets and beet cake, and that was really fun and different.
Wow.
So we're super lucky. We have an amazing staff. We have, I'm going to pause. Let me just go back to the Digging Deeper. So they get, the last piece of that is the classroom teachers get some professional development. So I get to meet with them and our program manager to kind of help integrate what they're doing in the garden back into the classroom, and vice versa, like what they're doing in the classroom, bringing that out to the garden, because really you can do anything, fractions, it's easy, if that's what you're doing in math in the classroom, you go out to the garden and you can work on
make it
fractions.
real.
Yeah, you can
bring it home.
You can bring math into the garden, you can bring literature in the garden, do poetry out in the, it's like everything that they're doing can. So that's the kind of last piece of like helping those teachers integrate the two things, so it's not like this separate thing, it's part of their curriculum. So that's so that's where we've moved, because exactly what you're saying, we wanted to see that impact that's more than once in a while, that there's this consistent connection that they can build, and they can plant things that they get to see harvested in their garden at school.
I am so grateful for Rogue Valley Farm to School project. I mean, a lot of us are talking about, let's build the world we want to live in. It takes too much energy to fight the world that's not working. So it's better to put your energy toward just do the things that you would like to see happen in the world. And Farm to School project is such an amazing example of that. And it's just the amount of good you guys are doing, I think, is so amazing. There was a time when in Ashland in particular, there was no local or organic food in the cafeterias at all. And it's been an uphill battle, but thanks to Farm to School, there was millions of dollars that became available. I think it was when Trump was in office that actually happened. Steve Fry was like, this 200 and something boxes, is it a week? Trump signed that to happen, whatever.
Yeah, it was a USDA.
Maybe it was an accident.
When the pandemic started, the USDA had these grants that were not necessarily meant for little organizations like us, but because we were lucky and had Fry and had that hub, we were able to pull it off. So we were packing 2,000 boxes a week of organic produce that was going out to families at the schools we were working with.
like
Yeah.
low income families or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some
Cool.
mostly, but whoever wanted to come and get a box of free, beautiful organic produce.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna hijack the conversation right now, and I want to go right into at the farm or at the school garden with a kid, and there's a couple ways to look at it. Either thinking about what this kid was like when you first met them and their first experience at the farm, and maybe they were bouncing off the walls and didn't know how to control themselves, and then maybe a year or two later seeing that same kid maybe having come to a place of feeling at home or comfortable in nature like that. Or we could look at it that way, or another way to look at it would be looking at an aha moment, like where there's kids and they're fighting or something, and then they're like, well, there's enough ladybugs for everybody. Okay. Are there other moments like that?
All the time. Yeah. It's like, that's the best part of the job, I think, for me and for our staff, is those moments where, either like that kind of transformation that you see. I mean, it's cool because now our garden educators, they're in the school every week. They see those kids, once a week. They went through the pandemic together. We did distance learning all through the pandemic. They were seeing those kids on the screen once a week or twice a week.
Did they ever let them go out to the gardens to be outside?
Well, they weren't at school. They were when everyone was stuck at home.
Oh, okay.
But I'm saying that it builds this connection, so the garden educators have this connection with the kids. So there's times where they get to see these kids, transform from fall to the end of the school year, and in some cases over many years of seeing them. So lots of examples of those kind of transformative moments. I think one of the special things that happens is that there's certain kids that struggle in the classroom, for whatever reason. I have one of those kids.
I have a couple of ideas.
I know the reason.
Your own?
Yeah, but school is not for everyone. In terms of I think for most kids, it's not a great fit to have to sit still, to have that kind of focus, to be inside, all the things.
Do paperwork all day long.
You get it, right?
Shit, I'm 8 years old and I'm behind on my paperwork. My boss is chewing my butt off every day.
Yeah.
Dang, how am I ever going to buy a house? I'm 8 years old. How am I ever going to buy a house?
So we expect kids to do that, and then when kids are being disruptive, it's like, well, no wonder, right? So then those kids that sometimes are that in the classroom that are maybe the ones that have to continually be, talked to for whatever behavior issues, and then they get out to the garden, and there have been multiple examples of kids that are that kid that gets out to the garden, and then all of a sudden they're like, they're the leader. They're this different kid. They're amazing at whatever it is. Like they figure out,
they just needed something to do.
Yeah,
it was real.
They're like the mulcher, and they just love it. And they're going over and they're
mulching
the leaf pile, and they're sprinkling, and they're just so in their element, right? And they're like in their zone.
I could cry a river.
Yeah. So and then the teachers
just open the door. Let them out of the building.
Right. But so those kids that kind of go that extreme of being the kind of kid that's causing challenges to being kind of the star in the garden, where other kids are looking up to them, and they're really good at this thing that they're doing in the garden.
Nice.
And it shifts that whole relationship. The teacher is getting a chance to see them in a different way.
Yes.
The kids are having a different relationship.
Oh my God.
And
then they go back and then they take that new status with them back into the class.
Yeah.
And so it's like Johnny was a spaz in class, and he was always making trouble. But now we know he's a great farmer.
Yeah.
So
that happened.
That's so cool.
This kind of going back, I don't know where we want to take this conversation, but I think, in recent years, so, the pandemic started, school closed down, kids were at home. I mean, as I'm sure you've talked about in your other podcast, mental health issues are
Zoom schooling was a death
and then
sentence.
Zoom schooling's happening, distance learning's happening, and then for the Rogue Valley we have the Alameda fire, and we work with the Phoenix Talent School District, and all of a sudden, I was evacuated, we were, so much trauma in Talent and Phoenix. and I know a little bit Ashland too, but really Talent Phoenix.
Oh yeah,
you know.
big time. And we're still recovering
We're
from
still
that.
recovering. So we have these
Yeah.
kids that we're, going to work with that are maybe not even in their house. There might be, they may have just, their house probably just burned up. Or I shouldn't say probably. About half of the kids that we're working with in Phoenix Town lost their homes. So they're, on families, relatives' floors. They're all packed into one house, or they're in a hotel for a lot of them. And so we're trying to figure out, like, how can we support these kids that have just gone through this and are still like living not in their, lost their house and all their possessions.
Yeah.
So we kind of made this switch to how do we, we've always, I think, kind of come from that lens of supporting students with mental health, but we really kind of made a conscious switch of like, okay, what really matters? And, so we kind of came to these bigger themes of, community, gratefulness, especially gratefulness around farm workers, because a lot of those families that lost their homes were agricultural workers.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of uplifting and like, we're so lucky that we have agriculture that happens in our valley, and a lot of your families are the people that are responsible for bringing food, to our tables.
And this is curriculum. So this is
so this is kind of what we're basing our lessons around,
classroom.
kind of these bigger themes of, in the garden time. So the that community, the connections, the gratefulness, and kind of this theme of resilience, because we started doing a lot of research around, people go through trauma, and some people weather it and can deal, and some people sends them down, and same with kids. So I don't know if you've heard of ACEs, but adverse childhood experiences. It's kind of this score of like, some kids go through, every imaginable horrible trauma thing that you can think, and have these scores, and some of them are resilient. And so what can we do to build that resilience?
I love that you guys were responsive enough, that you weren't just rolling along with the same old curriculum, that you responded to this crisis, the fire and the pandemic, and adjusted and customized. And wow, it's so cool that you're like, okay, mental health was an issue before, but now it's a major issue. So
we really focused our lessons on, even with distance learning, where you're like through a screen, but like, how do we still, in that first year of like, how do we still connect with those kids?
Joking, right?
Right,
if
and just having like that, some
laughing.
of that research around resilience is just making eye contact with kids, and just using their names, knowing that they have an adult that knows who they are, that that cares about them.
You guys went deep.
So
cool.
Yeah, and garden time, even through a computer, obviously is not ideal in any way.
So you're in the garden with someone filming you, like, here
No,
I am.
Well, sometimes, but often we were just at our house. The educator was at their house. But it did give us this chance to delve into things we hadn't so much before. Watching videos around social justice, and the technology does kind of give you this opportunity of like seeing, watching a video of what's going on in a garden, around the world, or all these different things that we hadn't been able to bring in. So we kind of have taken the good side, the silver lining of developing that distance learning and that kind of strong connection piece. And now that we're back in the garden, obviously it's so much easier to really have those connections. And
you never could have done all that work with these kids during COVID or the fire if it hadn't been for already having this relationship established, like trying to start that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was tough. Like the anxiety of like, how do we still connect with kids in a distance learning post-fire environment, when like the school staff were just, they were absolutely at their overwhelmed peak, as all of us were. It was just like, but the fact that we'd already started relationships with those schools was the only reason. Like basically, it was like the hardest part of my job, but I just had to be like, okay, don't worry about it.
And you were
we don't need to ask anything of you. We're just gonna come do this program. We just have to figure it out. We have to figure out how to connect with these kids, even through like synchronous learning, which is crazy. But we're just going to do it, because we're not going to give up and just like have a whole year of not connecting with these kids.
Good.
So
wow.
it was a challenge.
Good job.
But
so now I'm hearing biologists say that, COVID doesn't do very well out of doors. COVID loves to breed in airports and airplanes and, in bus stations, in your home, but it doesn't survive at all in the outdoors, like in the open air. So it would have been great if we as a society had that viewpoint. It would have been nice to be able to meet with kids once a week outside.
Well, we
at a
kind of
garden.
did. It did happen because we were saying the same thing to these schools of like, we can help you do education outside. Like that's what we do, right? And so there were schools. Central Point School District did these limited in-person things where families could bring the kids once a week. And so we did do some outdoor garden time. We did just all kinds of crazy stuff that year. It's just like anyone we could get to be like, yeah, there's some like special ed group that's here on campus. Sure, whatever. We'll like take them out to the garden. We'll do like whatever we can to like get kids. Like we're here to support you. So we did get to do some limited times in the garden, but
Cool.
It was chaos at the schools, as you can
Well,
imagine. So.
yeah. So my hat is off to you for working with what you had to work with, and it wasn't the job that you signed up for, right?
No.
Like now you're the Zoom
Yeah.
moderator, you're the Zoom creator, and you were thinking that you were going to put your boots on and go.
It was, yeah, there was some resistance, but I just feel really grateful we had an awesome staff that was like, well, okay, this is not what we signed up for. We are like outdoor people, right? We are not like sit at computer people, and now we're like having to teach through a computer. But they did it, and they made the most of it, and we survived it. So
Well, yeah, and a lot of people stayed home during the pandemic and remodeled their houses, redid their yards. So I don't know if any of this happened, but that would have been a great time to be building gardens at the schools. I'm a big fan of the winter greenhouse, and because school largely happens during those inclement, cold, wet months, it seems sensible that every school would have this big, beautiful greenhouse.
yeah,
And be growing because the difference, kale and chard growing outside in a climate where it freezes gets pretty beat up. But if you have it in a greenhouse, you can have like supple baby kale. I called it teen kale or adolescent kale. So it just seems like it would be so great. For a long time I've had this, my platform as a mayor of Ashland or whatever, president of the United States, was going to be to have a 5-acre functioning farm at every school. And that's a joke. Of course, I'm not into politics really. There's other people that do that. But seriously though, like a 5-acre, like a serious farm, animals, orchards, vegetables, and processing rooms, kitchens, like have that be a big part of a school. So that's the big vision.
It's our dream too, and it's happened. There are examples of that happening. It's pretty cool. Even in the time that I've been working with Rogue Valley Farm to School, the bigger farm to school movement has changed a lot. It's gained a lot of momentum. Like there's a lot more school gardens than there used to be, and there's a lot more interest in it, and there's a lot more schools purchasing local produce from farms. And there are some examples. There's an awesome example. Bethel School District has a farm at school where it's just that they have a farm. The school had this land, the school district had this land, and they started a farm, and the high schoolers, manage it, and
wow.
The produce goes to the cafeteria.
So I want you to send me that later.
They made
link.
a great video.
That sounds cool.
It's one of those like videos where you can watch it and be like, yes, that's what we all want.
Yeah.
I think that's a dream. I don't think it's totally out there. It's going to take a long time, but someday I think more and more schools, I think, are seeing all the benefits of connecting farms and schools. So.
And then there's Alice Waters and I guess Berkeley High, where you enter the school through the garden, so that because a lot of times these school gardens get marginalized and they're way back there. Um,
Yeah, but it's cool. I mean, all 8 schools that we work in right now have school gardens, and lots of other schools around here have gardens. So it is becoming more a part of school world to
yeah,
have a garden.
baby steps.
Yeah.
Well, I love the story of the boy that was struggling in the classroom and found out that he was a really good mulcher and that he had value and that he got praise and that there was, yeah, that worked for him. That's such a cool story. Do you have any memories of like moments where you're like with these kids and they're like checking out the bugs where like kids all of a sudden are like, "Oh my God, we're all connected. We should stop all the wars in the world." I mean, if you can you remember like moments where the kids it just clicks?
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard a kid say we should stop all the wars, but kids are just they're in the moment, right? Kids are better at that, I think, than adults are, like being in the moment. And yeah, we have lots of great kid quotes of things, but um, I like what's coming to mind is picking um, picking roots. So we've had this a couple times, with like I'm thinking of picking beets. So like kids, first of all, like to actually harvest something on the ground can be mind blowing for a lot of kids if
Right.
you haven't grown up with a garden. That you can like just the concept that you can like pull something out of the ground and you can eat it. So
Yeah.
like, I remember this one kid, we're harvesting beets and like just that is like exciting. It's exciting for adults too. Like you see the greens, but like you're kind of like moving the dirt and then like you pull up this giant beet and it's just like
Power.
and this kid pulled out, he didn't know, he'd never like seen a beet before. I don't think he'd probably ever eaten a beet before.
Yeah.
And it was just like, just the like getting it out of the ground was super exciting. It's like this reward and it like popped out and you like looked at the beet and it was just like, oh! And and we like watched out. I'm like, you can eat this.
Yeah.
He's like,
Take
no,
a bite.
no, you can't. Like he didn't believe me. I was like, no, you can, and like we'll slice it up, and you can like try it. You can roast it. You can just eat it raw if you wanted to see what it tastes like. You can eat it, and he like I really had to convince him, and he was like, no, you can't eat this.
Yeah.
No, really, you can't. So I like did it. Gave him like a little sliver, and raw beets kind of intense, like that he was chewing it, and he's just like couldn't believe that like he actually put something in his mouth that it was edible. Right. And had all these like of course then we were telling him like, oh, it's really good for you, it's got all these minerals and vitamins and blah blah blah, but just like the act of being able to pull something out of the ground, wash it off, and like put it in your mouth is amazing. And I see that all the time with kids, like they just can't believe that like that can really happen, and it's so cool. And you can grow it, and like you can plant the seed, you can grow that thing, you can pull it out, and you can eat it. It's a pretty amazing thing to see, and to get kids to get people, to see anyone do that for the first time, and like to get that experience over and over with kids, to get to see maybe their first time of ever harvesting something, or their first time of planting something or transplanting and putting a little start in the ground, and just like the excitement of that. And insects. I mean, kids love. Who doesn't love like hunting for insects? Finding ladybugs is like always super exciting, and then like knowing, oh, these ladybugs are eating the aphids that are like mowing down on our kale, and it's just like those connections happen all the time. But
it's wild to think how far we've come from where we were as hunter-gatherers. Like I always fall back to the whole hunter-gatherer, because that's like 99% of what we are, right? Like we've got 200,000 years as Homo sapiens hunter-gatherers, and we have like 200 years of like modern industrial man. So we are 99 point something percent hunter-gatherers, and it was normal in your day to walk around and eat something that's on a tree, or dig in the ground and find like a fat juicy grub or a root. So such a natural thing, but to be that removed to like, we can't eat this. When I got my first job working on an organic farm in Bolinas, it was really fun to watch how people grazed as they were like, we're harvesting snap peas, and everyone's got a mouthful of snap peas. And
there's I think you're right, like that's human nature, right? It just feels so like exciting but also comfortable to just pick something off and put it right into your mouth. And it's always surprising, like kids, like parents are often blown away because they'll see their kid on the farm pick something, pick a vegetable, a snap pea, which snap peas are such a yummy, sweet thing.
Or a cherry tomato.
And crunchy, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and put it in their mouth and be like, this is so good. And then, parents are just like, oh my God, I've never seen my kid eat like a fresh, vegetable and be so excited about it. And even the change between like picking it right there, putting it in your mouth, even the difference of that, like where we gather it up, we go and we wash it, we chop it, we put it in like a salad. They're still into it, but they're like, you can get kids to eat just about anything when they can actually like pick it. Like kids eating raw kale, raw kale is like, it's all right. It's not, it's not my favorite without
kind of like eating lawn clippings.
It's not
bit,
amazing,
like grass.
but if they get to pick it and like put it right into their mouth from the field, they'll do it. They'll try just about anything that way. So
I remember kids, the peer pressure. A lot of times, peer pressure causes things that you don't consider good, but it can go the other way.
Oh yeah, positive peer pressure.
So peer pressure at a farm to school event at Eagle Mill Farm caused all the kids to have seconds on the sauteed greens. So they're lined up and they see their friends are like, oh yeah, me too. And so we're in there like making sauteed kale and spinach as quick as we could. And they're just like, oh my God, it's so good. Of course, yesterday my friend was like, well, if you put garlic in there, it makes it taste really good.
And we've been doing more cooking in our garden times too. So winter is a great time to do lots of cooking projects. So yeah, we get, we'll be out in the garden and we have little hot plates and all this, it's our exciting
hot
kitchen.
Plates in the garden.
You have a table, you have an extension cord, and you have a plug-in hot plate, and that's about all you need to have a kitchen in the garden. And so yeah, kids will harvest stuff from the garden, and there it's like even more connection, because it might be that they actually planted those seeds or they transplanted those starts and they've watched it grow, and now they get to finally harvest it and eat it. And then sauteing greens in the garlic and olive oil in the garden, or whatever it is. Like, it's really fun to do cooking projects in the garden too. So that, but yeah, the farm field trip is awesome just because it's at that bigger scale of like being out in the fields and everybody having to make 30 kids making a meal that comes together.
And it's all day. It's not like it's not 50 minutes or 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's a longer immersion, but I think the weekly garden classes, it's just different. It's shorter. It's like an hour, but an hour every week is a lot more time than 4-hour field trip.
It's cool that you guys are doing that, because having it be a regular part of their world, I think is important.
And there's pride. There's so many benefits. I can go on and on and on. We did like all these evaluations around all the benefits, but there's so many mental health benefits, besides just like being out, like all you have to do is walk outside. Being outside is a mental health benefit, but there's also that aspect of, teamwork. They have to work together. And then there's, kind of that pride of like taking care of something, and the communal, like the garden is
nurturing,
communally taken care of by everybody. It's not just like, this is mine and I own this kale or whatever. It's like the whole class is working together, and then all the relationship building that happens in the garden, like I mentioned before. But we did kind of these findings around these, the garden is healing was kind of one of our themes for these findings we did around all these questions we asked. And we didn't really think about the teachers so much. Like, we know there's benefits to the teachers of having garden time, but we didn't really think about like the teachers were having the same mental health benefits. It was like such a breath of fresh air for them to get to go out to the garden for 50 minutes, in their teaching day, and to not be the ones in charge, to have like this different relationship with the kids where there's like someone else doing the teaching, and get to learn alongside the kids, and also just like all the same mental benefits that the kids were seeing, like breathing fresh air, getting your hands in the dirt, feeling the sunshine, vitamin D, that's like on and on. Like, oh yeah, of course that's happening for the teachers too, even though like that wasn't like in our consciousness when we were designing the program. But you can't really go wrong when you're outside in a garden. Even kids that have like a lot of kind of sensory, some kids it is uncomfortable if they're not used to it, and especially kids that have kind of sensory overload issues, like being outside can feel a little overwhelming, like getting their hands like gooey and dirty can feel overwhelming. But I think we try to find ways, and like there's always something in the garden, like, okay, you're not into that, you might be into this. It's like,
Cool.
okay, you're not into that, but there's kids that are just like, they love to weed. I mean, most kids love to weed, which is always like mind blowing to me. Like kids love to weed because there's just like, you just get in there, it's like you get to rip things out, you get to do things that everyone else tells you don't do, it's like you don't, like when you're harvesting, you have to be careful, but like when you weed, you can just like go for it. Like
nice.
You want to try to just like get that whole root out, like dig down as far as you can, get that dandelion, whatever it is, get it out. So yeah, I feel like there's always something that kids can find a comfort in, and we try to be really conscious of like, kids come from all different places, and like it's not always, to us it seems really obvious that being outside in a garden is always positive, but kids have different backgrounds. If some of their families had negative, if you worked out in the fields and that wasn't always a positive experience for you, so we try to kind of just come at it from like really thinking about kids as individual humans. Everyone's got their own things, and making sure that everyone feels comfortable and heard. And
sounds like Summerhill School in England. A.S. Neal wrote this book called Summerhill School, but it was a boarding school, but the kids were allowed to follow their passions, and they weren't forced to do reading, arithmetic, and math. They were, if a kid wanted to build an engine for a race car and he realized that in order to do that he needed to be able to read some stuff, then he would learn to read so that he could do that. And I love that, like, that say there's like some little girl and like it's all too much for her, but maybe she could draw a picture of a kale leaf. I mean, and that you're able to meet them wherever they are instead of making them meet you where you are. And I think that's the problem with the American education system, is everybody's got to jump through the same hoops. This is the format. You are going to have to bend into this weird shape.
And it's easier for, like, I agree. There's a lot of issues I have with like regular classroom teaching, but we're lucky in that we can be more freeform. It's fairly easy in the garden to structure things where students get to have a choice. They don't get to have choices that much, like kids in general don't get to have choice very often, especially at school. You don't get a lot of choices of like, well, what would you want to do? So we try to build that into the garden of like, here's some choices of things. What sounds good to you?
And it's going to rub off on the teachers. I love that you're like, the teachers are out there going, gee, I kind of like this. It's kind of nice to be outside.
Exactly.
And then they're probably blown away, like watching that little boy that was so much trouble in the classroom, like watching him like, geez, he seems to be fine now. Maybe.
I mean, it's a huge range with teachers. Obviously, they're humans just like everyone else. Like, but it's amazing the difference. Like, some teachers are very, very reluctant about wanting to do garden time. It's like really uncomfortable for them. They don't want to take the time. They don't want to be out there.
They don't get that it's good for the kids. Like their
they don't
needs,
see the benefits.
like their needs are before the kids'
So sometimes
needs.
winning over the teachers feels like, whoa, that was a huge win, to get a teacher that's been really reluctant to be into it. And then there's of course teachers that are like, yes, this is all, I'm all about it. They're like dying to be part of the program. They're like, yeah. And those are the easy ones that we go to. They're like, okay, your class should be a partner class. But sometimes it's those reluctant teachers that like, there's some teachers that we've been working with and it's taken a while, to like feel like they're excited.
Gosh, I am so impressed. I am so impressed that this organization, Rogue Valley Farm to School, here in Ashland, Oregon, in Southern Oregon, has grown so much and stuck with it. Like when I remember at the beginning, I think Tracy Harding was the executive director and she was the only paid person. And then Melina came on.
Melina was there before Tracy was, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Was Melina the director?
No, I mean, she kind of started when it was Eagle Mill Farm Project. And so it's kind of like, well, okay, if I can find some money to do this.
Wow, cool. So she took it over from
So Tracy was the first executive director. Yeah. So they got it going. And then, Tracy was like an actual director. And then her and Melina were both getting paid. For so many years, like when I started, yeah, there was only a couple people that were paid, and it was all volunteers. And I came in starting to do field trips, and I would just get paid, for those couple hours, and I do it kind of here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was mostly volunteer.
And wow. And
Not that
now,
we're so huge now; we have 12 staff, but that's
12.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. And you've won a lot of battles. You helped get local organic food into some of the schools.
Yeah, and I haven't really talked about that at all, but that is like a whole nother aspect of what we're doing. So we have all these education programs, but we're supporting other schools besides these partner schools, all the schools in Jackson and Josephine County, with procurement. So that piece of connecting schools to purchase local produce, which sounds so simple, right? It's such a win-win of buy produce from, but it's really complicated, and it's really hard.
and it's kind of like it's not going to happen if there isn't a group like you guys that are like, hi.
Yes.
Hi, yeah, we're still here.
Yeah.
And what are we working on that step?
Exactly.
To get the food in there?
We hold their hands every step of the way, because even though you'd think the biggest barrier would be money, it's not even money anymore, because now there's funding. Schools have money specifically to buy local products, but it's not as easy. If you have a contract, especially for this is a whole nother topic, but it's really hard for schools to purchase local food. So we're like, everything we can do to make it as easy on them as possible. We're constantly whatever you need, we're here, we'll help you, we'll do everything. We'll even order it for you. We've been doing that a lot in Grants Pass School District. We place the order with the farms for them and just bill them. We just make it as easy as possible, but it's happening. It's like this.
It's so cool.
Very slow. But
it's like a food revolution happening in Southern
slow.
Oregon, and Jackson County is a GMO-free, one of 5 GMO-free counties. Now it's against the law to be a GMO-free county, but this is a special place. It's amazing there are so many food organizations in Southern Oregon working to support new farmers, working to make food available through online CSAs. I mean, there's so much networking going on.
Yeah, it's cool. The Rogue Valley Food System Network is awesome, and we are really lucky, because you go to other places and it's just what's farm to school, what's food system? What, huh?
So at the health food stores, you can buy bags of farm to school apples.
Yeah.
So now is that
we should, because that money comes right to us.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought for sure you were joking. But
if you go to Ashland Co-op and you see those bags and it says farm to school, we get a percent. It's a thing through OGC, Organically Grown Company, that
is it a national thing? Is there a national farm to school?
There is a national farm to
organization?
School network. Yep. There's a state network. So Melina, who used to work at Rogue Valley Farm to School, is now the director of the Oregon Farm to School and School Garden Network. So that's kind of like our state umbrella.
Oh, far out.
Yeah. So we have a state organization, and Oregon's pretty good with farm. We're kind of ahead of the game. We're not the best in the country, but we have a lot, and we've had a lot going on in Oregon. And then there's a national farm to school network. So there's support at all levels to work for these things. So it's cool when you look across the country at all the things that are happening. And one of the best things about, there's lots of things I love about my job, but I love it when I get to be connected with people in other parts of the country that are doing this kind of work, and with other people in the state. So we're the state has this regional hub program. So we're the regional hub for Southern Oregon, for Jackson and Josephine County, in terms of education and procurement. So sometimes the hub is one or the other. We're both. So we support people. So if someone calls me and says hey, I want to start a school garden, or hey, where's a good place to buy local seeds or whatever, I can give them technical assistance as the regional.
Cool.
I do it. It's I can't give it, but I get some funding for hours for us to be that regional hub for education. We have an education gathering, and then we also are the procurement hub, which that is a lot of technical assistance. That's what I was saying, that kind of hand holding of schools call, and are we want some carrots. Well, how do we do that? And it's like, okay, here's how you do it. We'll walk you through it every step of the way.
Wow, really nice.
And managing, because a lot of people have these grants, and they have the money, so it's also helping them manage that grant. Like, you can spend money on this, and we can help you make that purchase.
So having 12 staff makes it so that you can answer the phone, and you can say, okay, you can have somebody somewhat dedicated to interface with the schools.
Yeah, and we have an awesome staff. We're 12, but really, I shouldn't say but, most of us aren't full-time. I'm so 2 co-EDs are full-time. Otherwise, we have a lot of part-time people, but super passionate, dedicated people that work their butts off to do these cool things, and they're not getting paid what they should be getting paid.
Right, but hopefully it's
the world of working for a nonprofit.
Hopefully it's constantly improving.
It is, slowly. We're really working on trying to have like some better staff benefits. I mean, the benefits of like there's great flexibility and you're doing a good thing, but it would be nice to pay what I think people doing this work should get paid. But
sure.
We're trying to work that way. But I don't want to get into the money side of being a nonprofit, but it's always a struggle, right? We're always looking for funding.
Priorities, nice if there's a friendly environment at the White House, I guess, to create grants.
I mean that helps, but it's also like down to the local, like getting donations from individuals in our community, and having that community support is really helpful. And we get funding from state, but we're always looking for, we have to do a lot. So we have our grants, and we have some of those bigger grants and foundations, but then we also do fundraising events. So I think you came to Turn Up the Beat right in the fall. You were there?
At Fry Farm.
Yeah, at Fry.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do that again. It's gonna be in June this year. I don't know a date yet, but
okay, cool.
We'll do that again. So those fundraisers are really important, ways of not just raising money, but also just kind of putting out like, hey, did you know about us? We're doing this cool stuff. And
very nice.
Getting out into the community.
So I just want to think about the good that Rogue Valley Farm to School has done over 15 years, and just thinking, so 15 years ago, a seventh grader, is it just elementary school kids?
Pretty much. We have worked with older kids, but mostly we worked 3rd through 5th with some little kids in there.
So 3rd through 5th, no 6th?
Well, 6th is usually middle school.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so a 5th grader is 11 years old. So the earlier ones are 26 years old right now. They're in the world.
Oh gosh.
They maybe have jobs, and those kids have this whole aspect of their identity or their skill set or their relationship to the earth that was improved through Farm to School. So, I mean, the effects are pretty massive.
I mean, it's hard to say for sure what happens to all those kids, but I like to always kind of think of like, the kids go out on these farm field trips, and who knows, even the kid that seems like they're totally not into it, but it's in there somewhere, right? Like it's percolating, and then maybe like someday it comes out, like they have this other experience of like, oh, yeah. That time I was on the farm and I got to like pick a beet and we actually ate it. Like they maybe haven't even thought about that in 10 years or 20 years or whatever. But like somewhere it comes back to them. They have some kind of positive association with food or with being on a farm or with like that oh, remember that year I had garden time? Like maybe they haven't thought about it, but it's in their conscious somewhere.
Yeah, and another thing is there's all of you wonderful facilitators, and some of you may be farmers yourself, but I'm just imagining when you're at a real farm that professionally grows food for people, the students, the school kids are going to actually meet some of the actual farmers, right? And it's like, oh my God, that's a farmer. Look at them. Look at what they're wearing. Let's go talk to them and see what they're like.
I love it. I love when we're on the farm. Like we do programs at Hanley Farm, and it's just like these people they're out there and they're just doing their thing, and it's like we try to treat them like they're rock stars, right? It's like, look, there's the farmer, It's like it's not usually just like one farmer at most farms. It's like there's lots of people doing farm work.
Yeah.
Not lots, but a handful.
Yeah.
And
wonder what they'll say.
The kids are like, oh. oh, they always think we're the farmers, which is fine. That's cool. I think
Right.
that, but I'm like, well, actually, we're not.
And then you burst their bubble and you're like, that's a real farmer.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then we go to Hanley. You've been to Hanley.
Yes.
They have the historic house where they're all like, you live in that house?
Uh-huh.
No, actually, no one lives in that house.
Oh my God, right.
But it is. It's like, farm. And I love that. The farmers, the farm workers are elevated to like this, like, yeah, they're the rock stars of the world. They're the ones that are enabling us to have food,
It's
and
the
there's people
silent heroes.
all over the country that are doing sometimes really not super fun work to bring you the food that you get to eat.
Sometimes maybe they'll make $15 or $20 an hour as the owner of a farm. Sometimes they might make $1.35 an hour. Sometimes they might pay $10 an hour to go out and work, depending on the fluctuation.
Yeah.
Well, Rebecca Slosberg
Yes,
of the Rogue Valley
Dave
Farm to
Munson,
School.
yes.
Hey, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy with what has been revealed today and the healing powers of nature. Like you were saying, just walk out the door. Just like have the teacher open the door and just be like, psst, go out. Because to me, like my daughter used to have colic when she was real little, and I would come home from work and she'd be crying and her mom would be like, take her. And I would take her and strap her in a baby Bjorn, and I'd walk out the front door of our house in Dunsmuir, and it was like a park. It was these giant black oaks and bird song everywhere. And the minute I walked out the door, that little crying girl would just be like, she'd go silent because the river was right there and the birds were singing. So nature has this ability to maintain balance. And so when you look at nature, whether you realize it or not, you're seeing balanced systems.
Yeah.
It's like the leaves aren't all spilling out into the dirt and everything's like, but inside a house, it's a man-made system and stuff can get wonky, or in a classroom.
Right.
So,
and we like to think we're not somehow part of that, like we're just separate, but obviously we're all part of it.
Yeah. Well, super gratitude for your dedication.
Yeah, thanks.
Shake your hand on YouTube. All right, thank you. This is a wrap for the Rebecca Slosberg, the co-executive director of Rogue Valley Farm to School project, which you can easily find. And again, please check out davidcmunson.com and learn more about my book, Wake Up Laughing, where I offer 23 different chapters full of things you can do to be healthier and happier. And gardening is one of those chapters. I wonder what the other 22 are. Have a beautiful day. It's a wrap. And then I come over here and I see that it's
How about
still...
giving money to nonprofits? That should be one of them.